Okay, so picture this. You're lying in bed at like 11:47 p.m., and instead of sleeping, you're doing that thing where you open your banking app for the fourth time today, like the number's going to be different than it was at lunch. And it's not that you're broke exactly. You've got a job, you've got a little bit saved, maybe a 401k you contribute to because HR told you to during onboarding, but there's this low hum of anxiety underneath all of it. Because deep down, you have no idea if what you're doing is actually going to work. You don't know if you're behind. You don't know if the people who made it knew some secret you missed. And every time you try to research it, you get 12 contradicting opinions from 12 different finance bros. And you close the tab more confused than when you opened it. Yeah, I know that feeling really, really well. My name's Josh, and I spend an unreasonable, honestly kind of embarrassing amount of time thinking about money, not just the mechanics of it, the spreadsheets and the percentages, but the psychology underneath it. Why some people build wealth almost by accident, like it's just a natural extension of how they live, while other people, smart people, hardworking people, stay stuck in the same holding pattern for 20 years. I've read the textbooks, I've read the forums at 2 a.m., and what I've landed on is, honestly, simpler than almost anyone wants it to be. So here's what I want to do with you today. I'm not going to give you some abstract lecture on diversification. I'm going to walk you through the actual, specific, step-by-step strategy I would use if I were starting completely from scratch in 2026, knowing what I know now, with no bad habits, no sunk cost accounts, no legacy mistakes to unwind. Just a clean slate and a plan. Because here's the thing nobody tells you. The strategy isn't complicated. It's the discipline that's hard. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand not just what to do, but why it works, which honestly is the part that actually makes people stick with it long enough for it to matter. Let's get into it. All right, first thing. And I know, everyone wants to skip straight to which stocks do I buy, but if I started in 2026 with $0 invested, the very first thing I would do isn't investing at all. It's building what I like to call the moat. Think of your financial life like a castle. Doesn't matter how tall the towers are, how shiny the flags on top look, if there's no moat around it, one bad season, one layoff, one medical bill, one car transmission deciding to give up on life, and the whole thing gets stormed. I've watched this happen to people. Genuinely good savers, disciplined people who had a rough 6 months hit them and had to sell investments at the worst possible time just to stay afloat. That's not a strategy failure on the investing side, that's a moat failure. So, practically, what does that mean? It means before I put a single dollar into the market, I'm building 3 to 6 months of essential expenses in a high-yield savings account. Not a regular checking account earning basically nothing, a high-yield savings account, because honestly, why would you leave money sitting there earning dust when it could be earning 4 or 5% doing absolutely nothing risky at all? And look, I get it. Sitting on cash feels boring. It feels like you're missing out while the market's doing its thing. But here's the reframe that changed everything for me. That emergency fund isn't dead money, it's insurance. It's what lets you invest aggressively everywhere else, because you're never going to be forced to sell your index funds in a panic during a downturn just to cover rent. The moat is what lets the castle actually get tall. Takeaway here. If you don't have this yet, this is step 0. Not step 1, sort of, if you get to it, step 0. Everything else in this video assumes this piece is already in place. Okay, moat's built. Now we get to the actual money, where it goes, and honestly, this is the part most people get backwards, because they think investing starts with picking stocks. It doesn't. It starts with picking the right container for your money before you ever choose what's inside it. Here's the order I'd follow, and think of it like pouring water into a series of cups. You don't move to the next cup until the one in front of you is full, or at least full enough. Cup 1, employer match. If your job offers any kind of match on a 401k or similar plan, that's the first stop Full stop, no exceptions. Why? Because it's an instant, guaranteed, risk-free return that you will not find anywhere else in the entire investing universe. If your employer matches 50% up to 6%, that's a 50% return on day one before the market's even done anything. Leaving that on the table is, and I say this with love, just leaving free money in a drawer somewhere and walking away from it. Cup 2, and this one's a little less obvious, is a Roth IRA, assuming you're eligible based on income. Here's why I love this account so much, and it's honestly a bit of an underrated piece of the puzzle. You're putting in money you've already paid taxes on, so it grows completely tax-free. And when you pull it out in retirement, the government doesn't get another bite. When you're young, or even not that young, honestly, and you've got decades of compounding ahead of you, tax-free growth is an enormous, almost silent advantage. Nobody throws a parade for it. It just quietly makes you richer. Cup 3 is going back to max out that 401k or workplace plan if you can swing it, because the tax-deferred growth there is still doing a lot of heavy lifting even without the match component anymore. And Cup 4, if you've filled the first 3 and there's still money left over, which, hey, good problem to have, is a regular taxable brokerage account. No special tax treatment, but total flexibility, no contribution limits, no rules about when you can touch it. The mistake I see constantly is people doing this completely out of order, dumping money into a brokerage account because it feels more active and exciting while leaving free employer match money on the table, or skipping the Roth because nobody ever explained why it mattered. Order of operations. It's not glamorous, but it's the difference between your money working as hard as it possibly can versus just working okay. Now, the part everyone's been waiting for. What do you actually put in these accounts? And look, I'm going to disappoint some of you here because the answer isn't some clever rotation strategy or a basket of trendy sector picks. If I were starting in 2026, the core of my portfolio would be broad, low-cost index funds. That's it. That's the big reveal. I know, it doesn't feel sexy. There's no thrill in it. It's not going to make for a dramatic story at a dinner party. But here's the thing about investing that took me embarrassingly long to internalize. Boring and effective aren't opposites. A lot of the time, they're the exact same thing wearing different clothes. Here's the simple version of why this works. When you buy a total market index fund, you're essentially buying a tiny sliver of every major company in the economy at once. You don't have to guess which company's going to win. You just own the whole race. And, historically, the total market, held over long stretches of time, has outperformed the vast majority of professional stock pickers who are getting paid enormous salaries specifically to try to beat it. Let that sink in for a second. People whose entire job, whose entire education, whose entire professional identity is built around beating the market. Most of them don't, over long periods, after fees. So what exactly makes any of us think we're going to outguess that from a phone app in our free time? A simple way I'd break it down for someone in their 20s or 30s starting completely fresh. Something like a total U.S. stock market index fund as the backbone. A slice of international index exposure so you're not just betting on one country's economy forever, and a smaller allocation to bonds that grows as you get closer to actually needing the money. You can even just use a target date fund if you want this entirely automated and never have to think about rebalancing again. It does the boring adjusting for you in the background. The emotional piece here, though, is honestly the harder part. Because simplicity feels like you're not doing enough. There's this nagging voice that says, surely there's something smarter, some hack, some insider move you're missing. And most of the time, there isn't. The financial industry has a vested interest in making this feel more complicated than it is, because complexity is what gets people to pay for expensive advice, expensive funds, expensive trading platforms. Simplicity is what actually lets your money compound in peace. All right, section 4. And this is the one that separates people who actually build wealth from people who talk a big game about building wealth. Automate it, and then, and this is important, leave it alone. I cannot stress this enough. The single biggest risk to any strategy I've just laid out isn't a market crash. It's you. It's the version of you at 2 a.m. scrolling financial news, seeing red numbers on a screen and panicking into selling everything. Or the opposite, seeing green numbers, getting greedy, and trying to time some clever exit and re-entry that statistically almost never works out the way people imagine it will in their head. Here's a little story. I know someone, smart person, genuinely, an engineer, who pulled everything out during a downturn a few years back because it felt unbearable to keep watching the numbers shrink. Made total emotional sense in the moment. And then, of course, the recovery happened faster and harder than anyone expected, and they missed the entire bounce back, sitting in cash, waiting for things to feel safer. They didn't get back in until the market had already recovered most of its losses. That single decision probably cost them more than years of careful saving had built. That's not a strategy failure. That's a psychology failure. And honestly, it's the most common one out there. So what I'd do concretely starting in 2026, set up automatic contributions on every paycheck so the decision to invest is made once in a calm moment and never has to be remade emotionally every single time the market wobbles. Dollar cost averaging in like this means you're buying more shares when prices are down and fewer when prices are up automatically without you having to feel brave or clever about it. It removes you, your very fallible, very human, very emotional self, from the equation as much as possible. And when the market drops, and it will drop at some point guaranteed, I want you to try to feel something almost opposite of panic. Try to feel a small flicker of honestly opportunity, because you're buying the same funds on sale. Nobody complains when their favorite store has a 20% off sale. But somehow, when it's the stock market, everyone runs the other direction. Weird, right? Last section before we wrap up, and I want to leave you with something that honestly took me way too long to viscerally understand, not just know, but feel. Compounding is boring for a really, really long time, and then it isn't. If you look at almost anyone's growth chart, anyone who built real wealth this way, the first several years look almost flat, like discouragingly flat. You put in money every month, you check the account, and it feels like basically nothing's happening. This is the part where most people quit. They convince themselves it's not working, that they're doing something wrong, and they either stop contributing or they chase something riskier because they want to feel like progress is happening faster. But then, somewhere down the road, and it's different for everyone depending on the numbers, there's this quiet inflection point where the growth from the money already in the account starts to outpace the money you're actually contributing yourself. That's the moment the machine takes over. That's when your money starts doing more of the work than you are, and it sneaks up on you because it's not a dramatic moment. There's no fireworks. You just look up one day and realize the account grew more last year from returns alone than you put in over the entire previous decade. The takeaway I want you to hold on to: the early years aren't the boring, wasted years. They're the years where you're planting something that you genuinely will not be able to see from the surface for a while. That doesn't mean it's not growing. So if I'm pulling this all together, starting completely fresh in 2026, here's the shape of it. Build the moat first, that emergency fund, before anything else. Follow the order of operations with your accounts. Employer match, then Roth, then max the workplace plan, then a taxable brokerage if there's room. Keep what you actually invest in boring, broad, and low cost, because simplicity isn't the compromise, it's the strategy. Automate the whole thing so your worst emotional instincts never get a vote. And then, honestly, the hardest part, just give it time. Real time. Years of it. None of this is thrilling. I know that. There's no version of this video that ends with you feeling like you just learned a secret code that unlocks instant riches, because that code doesn't exist, and anyone selling it to you is selling you something. What I hope you walk away with instead is something quieter and honestly more useful. A sense of relief, maybe. That you don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to be smarter than the market. You just need a plan simple enough to actually stick with and the patience to let it work. So start where you are, even if it's small. Even if it feels like it's not enough right now. It adds up in ways that are really hard to feel in the moment, but incredibly real over time. Future you is already thanking you for whatever you decide to do after watching this. Now, if you found this valuable, make sure to press that like button, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.